This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Coming up on This Week in Agribusiness, farmers and traders watch the weather as this market rally continues. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mike Pearson here in the studio along with Max Armstrong. Max, this drought has everybody's attention.
How long does the rally keep going on is a big question, too.
It is indeed. Meteorologist Greg Solier joins us here. And Greg, just how expansive is this drought?
Well, put it into perspective on the drought monitor here from the past week, some 65% of those cornfields and about 57% of those bean fields in some sense of a categorical drought across the Corn Belt and points on westward. But here is the story for this week, gentlemen. On to the maps and charts here. This very bullish outlook of rainfall across many areas of the Corn Belt, only the beginning on what should be a wetter conclusion to the month of June.
Looks like that rain is coming, Max.
Some folks have been getting just enough to get by. Pam Gill, out there in the wheat field, soft red winter wheat near Paducah, Kentucky, talked about what's been going on her farm.
Well, right now I think just getting a good rain has helped, but it has been dry. Everything still looks good, but we're going to have to continue to have this nice weather that we're having, plus a little rain to go along with it. But as of right now, everything looks good, but that could change in a heartbeat around here. So we're living on the edge right now with the water part of it. Yes, we are.
That was Pam Gill of Bardwell, Kentucky, working to get that wheat crop out of the field. Elsewhere in the country, farmers are taking advantage of this grain rally to get grain moved out of their bins and sold in town, which can always raise the risk of grain entrapments. Joining us now is Sam Goldberg. He's longtime television, film, and theater producer of the movie Silo. Sam, you've been very involved in the world of grain bin safety for some time. And what are some tips that you think producers need to have in their minds as they get ready to re-enter those bins?
You know, this time of year, you've just got to tell people what you're up to. You know, farming can be very isolating sometimes. A lot of times it's a lot of big machines and just a couple people on the farm, and someone heads up into a bin, and it might seem like it's a harmless act, but you've got to make sure you tell your spouse, your partner on the farm, a farmhand. Some people I know even call the local fire department and say, hey, I'm headed up into a bin, just let you know if you don't hear from me. More than anything, doing your best to keep grain in good condition is crucial, so it doesn't clump up, so it doesn't sweat, so it doesn't get congealed and create the kind of pockets that trap people in grain. And then listen, if you got a harness up before you head up into a grain bin. You know, costs $50 to $100 to get a used harness, and it'll save your life if you do it the right way.
That is such a great point, Sam. And we heard just earlier this week, 2 farmers in Porter, Minnesota, entrapped in grain, and unfortunately one of them did not make it out alive. The other one did, last I had heard. Sam, you mentioned the training that you do with fire departments. Can you talk a little bit about how far you've gone with these departments and where all you've done trainings?
Well, at this point, Silo's probably been viewed by departments in 40+ states. We've worked with Grinnell Mutual Insurance, with Nationwide Insurance, with Sukup Manufacturing, Cargill, you name it, who are gifting, bequeathing, donating farm safety trainings to departments all over. And then having farmers watch Silo as well, because Silo is essentially a cautionary tale as a film. It is, here's what you shouldn't do if you're going into a grain bin. You know, do lock out, tag out, don't turn on the auger. Tell somebody, communicate. And I think for us, we're filmmakers at Silo, right? We're all about telling stories. Our movie in its most essential form is just about increasing communication on the farm, whether that between farmers and each other, farmers and their families, farmers and their local fire departments. We've just got to talk more and communicate. And yeah, Silo and grain training is all over the country, and there are amazing resources for it. Which, you know, we can point to in any way you need.
Absolutely, Sam. And of course, let's talk about that. For folks who haven't seen Silo, where is the best place for them to encounter it there out in the wild?
Out in the wilds, you know, silothefilm.com is our website, silothefilm.com. We point you everywhere you need to go. You could buy a DVD and watch it at home. You can stream it on Hulu, on Amazon, on Apple, anywhere you need. Or you can host a screening in your town, which is really our favorite way to do this, because you bring everybody together, you communicate with one another, You bring the FFA, the Farm Bureau, the fire department, you name it, and you host an event that is just not only educational, but invigorating, enjoyable, entertaining. That's our goal with this project, is we want to entertain first, because it's got to be an interesting story. And then if we can have the positive impact down the road of maybe saving lives, we're good to go.
That's Sam Goldberg, producer of Silo the Movie. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. The Firestone Ag Dealer Network offers you the support, inventory, and resources you need. Visit firestoneag.com to find your local certified dealer. It's time to dig into these commodity markets, and joining us this week is Tommy Grisafi of Advanced Trading. And Tommy, this weekend is an important anniversary for you, isn't it?
Yes, sir, it is. It, as of today, would be the 30th anniversary of the day I stepped in the Chicago Board of Trade corn pit, June 24th, 1993, and a lot's changed.
A lot's changed, Tommy, but a lot has stayed the same, and you've marketed through some weather markets before. We're in one right now. How are you handling this new crop corn marketing decisions?
It's exciting, it's dynamic. The problem, Mike, as you know, is when the markets run up. Why did the markets run up? The markets ran up because someone's not producing the crop. The drought maps, again, got worse this week. At first it was, we have a drought, but there's rain in the forecast. Well, now as we get into that key time period during pollination, we put the crop in a dry conditions. Plant the dust, the bins will bust, so they say, but the rains haven't showed up. Now they're to the left of us, to the right of us. We are sitting literally at ground zero in this studio. The state of Illinois is by far going through one of the most challenging environments it ever has when it comes to production agriculture, if it doesn't start to rain.
And Tommy, that is the million-dollar question. If it starts to rain here, yield prospects are still there in this crop. So as a producer, how do you market, particularly in the heart of the Corn Belt, with this uncertainty?
Well, it gave us an opportunity to start thinking about 24. We have crop insurance for 23. We don't have crop insurance for 24. And we're having a drought in 23. We're probably not having our drought yet in 24. So oftentimes when you see an explosion like this, the farmer's very scared to get forward sold, but they can continue to get forward protected, which we preach or encourage at Advanced Trading. But the real gift in this is 24 and 25 sales. If this rally continues, as you know, this rally, when you have the supply restraint and you shoot the price up, demand wasn't good at $5. If we go to $7 in corn, we are doing massive demand destruction for years to come.
Would that demand destruction be concentrated in ethanol and livestock use, or would it be export demand?
It could be all the above. Interest rates are at 5%. Bank of England just raised rates this morning. The cost of money, it's not like the old days where you buy an extra boat of grain just to have it around. It costs so much. We went through our Costco toilet paper moment in grains during the pandemic where everyone was stocking up. That ship has sailed. It is very expensive to buy a boat of grain, and then you have to need it. So we're going back to just in time for the people buying it.
Tommy, we've seen this rally take place in the corn market, also happening in soybeans, and wheat has jumped in recently. Globally, has anything changed with the wheat crop?
Absolutely. India's been looking for wheat. They're trying to buddy up with Russia. Russia's looking to get back in the SWIFT program when it comes to moving money around. And you just can't have corn go up $1 and beans go up $2.50 in a few weeks and think that wheat wasn't going to eventually go along for the ride. This week it sure performed well.
Is it done, though, or do we still need to see this global dryness continue?
In the grain markets?
In the wheat market in particular.
In the wheat market. Wheat's funny because I've never thought any grain market's easy to trade. Wheat in particular is so hard to trade because it's grown in so many countries. But I can tell you this, with these higher prices, it's going to encourage more acres moving forward. But it's really, at this point, Mike, it's up to Mother Nature.
Tommy, in the wheat side, are you looking at deferred contract sales like you are in the corn market?
No, that's not to us, as obvious. Obviously, Advanced Trading is based in Bloomington, Illinois. We're very much a Midwest company. And King corn, they call it King corn for a reason. We grow 15 billion bushels, or we're trying to, and that's 15 billion bushels that need to be hedged, protected, and sold. Let's make sure we grow it first, Mike.
That is the million-dollar question. We're talking with Tommy Grisafi of Advanced Trading, and we'll have more markets when we return. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. Harvey Firestone invented the first pneumatic farm tire, forever changing what it means to farm hard. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more about this history and tire solutions for today. We're talking markets with Tommy Grizzoffi of Advanced Trading, and the weather market is on our mind. Tommy, we talked about the corn and wheat sides. Soybeans, that crop still has a little more time to catch the rain. So how do you handle marketing that new crop November soybean?
Very, very dynamic move in beans. Not only the beans, but the products. We've been, the disappointment in the farmer when they could have sold $14 beans and we traded all the way down to, I want to say $12.50. The opportunity as we rally back, but here's the biggest question. Are we growing beans? How severe is this drought? I remember in 2012, it looked like the crop was going to be poor. It started to rain at the end of August and September. The bean crop's just amazing how it can hold on. We'll know a lot more about the corn market before we'll know about the end result in the bean market.
So we still got some time there to see the weather develop. But Tommy, you did mention the moves in the products. We saw some very volatile moves this week in soybean oil and in soybean meal. What happened in bean oil?
There was a EPA decision. It leaked out and then it was officially announced, but the soybean oil and the sustainable aviation fuel folks and everyone else, they got a taste of what it's like to be an ethanol producer. Ethanol folks have been disappointed and find disappointment in government regulations. And a few months ago, you're probably on the show saying, I hear we're going to need 12 million more bean acres just to keep up. You could tone that down, or all of us could tone that down a little bit. We got way ahead of our skis. We saw soybean oil down limit this week as corn closed up 30. While soybean oil was down limit, soybean meal was almost limit up. Imagine having the wrong end of that on. So soybean oil limit down, soybean meal almost limit up. One of the most dynamic moves I've ever seen. Governments and decisions and policy affect markets, and it affects farmers.
They certainly do, Tommy. Let's talk about the protein markets. Again, speaking of government policy, we had more news on Proposition 12 this week. What's happening in the hog market?
A lot. Hogs are close to $15, maybe even $20 off their lows as we speak. And although the Supreme Court made that ruling, I believe, and it's fresh news, that the state of California actually intervened and said, well, maybe we can go a little further. So they're really flexing their muscles out in California. I always say crazy things happen on the coast and they work their way back to the Midwest.
Well, one of the things happening in the Midwest has been happening, Tommy, has been this rally in the cattle market. While we're talking here, it appears as though we might be taking a breather up in here in these live cattle values. Where do you think we go as we get deeper into summer?
I think you can still have time to buy insurance. If you're worried about downside in cattle, you have to understand how much we've truly rallied, and we can come down some more. Feeder cattle really started to respect that corn price. When corn spent one day above $6, the feeder cattle market said, let's pump the brakes. Things have changed.
Tommy's feeder cattle market in particular, given the risk here with this corn crop, would you be looking at any forward sales in the deferred months in feeders?
I think you have to protect that product. As we know, sometimes grain guys can store and ignore and get away with that. You don't have that opportunity in the livestock business. So if you're producing an animal, you have to have a plan on what you're going to do with that.
Tommy, you mentioned earlier the cost of money is going up. We saw the Federal Reserve pause on their rate hikes, but do you think there will be more coming?
Well, it's interesting because with this recent grain rally, and I filled up on the way here, $4.05 for the cheap stuff, as we like to say, and food prices are exploding. Now, maybe the consumer doesn't realize what happened in the Chicago Board of Trade this week, but that is going to hit the inflation numbers. And although we've had a big downtick in CPI and PPI, I look for that CPI to start going back up. And the Federal Reserve needs to tame inflation. Election next year, and everyone's going to want to vote, and they're not. American consumer is not happy with how much everything costs.
That's true. So you think the Fed's going to have to put the gas back to the interest rate hikes?
It's about the only tool they have.
All right. Lots to watch in both the broader economy and the commodity markets as we get through this year. Tommy Grizzoffi of Advanced Trading, thanks so much for joining us here this week.
Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by Copperhead Ag Products. Visit copperheadag.com for more information. I've called him Drone Boy at times in the past. Chad Colby's always looking for that better drone. He gives us an update on what he's seeing now.
What if I told you there was a better and easier way to do scouting on your farm? I don't think it's a secret. Over the last, I would say, at least 10 years now, I've been using drones in a lot of different capacities, and I fielded so many questions in the last month or so about what's in my fleet. What's a great starter drone? What are the advanced drones? Let's talk about them. So for a starter drone, I love the Mini 3. This is from Flying Ag. This kit's about $1,200. Comes with everything you need right here. But one of my favorite drones, well, until we got that drone, was this Air 2S. Now, this does have an optional controller right here, but it normally has the standard controller you see there on the right. But this drone is great. I've been flying this one over a year. They're still available. You can do a lot of great mapping with the drone. It is a fantastic system. You're going to be about $1,600. You have full mapping capabilities, comes with all the batteries, all the stuff you need. I'm going to let Randy from Flying Ag talk about the new flagship.
So this is a Mavic 3E. It's in their what they call their enterprise line. So there's the 3E, the 3M, which is a multispectral, and a 3T that has thermal built into it. You know, you're looking at 45 minutes of flight time, 20 plus megapixel camera. It's got a zoom camera built in. This one does come with a smart controller. You actually do all of your mapping right there on the controller itself.
That's something new.
Yes.
In the past, we were doing it with iPads, just so everybody understands. Now, we can do it on an Android-based tablet, which is nice, using Drone Deploy.
Correct.
That's what everybody's
Correct.
using now. I could tell you this, I've used this drone now in several different settings, and Randy, it's been amazing.
Yeah.
It does have the option for RTK. I know some guys using that. It has a strobe light. It just has a lot of features. Talk about lifespan of a drone.
We say we're in a 6 to 10 month drone market. A lot of times that's just as new models come out. But that doesn't mean you need to update every time. You know, yes, there are some new features that come along with it, but they don't mean that, hey, I need to update right away, you know, or whatever. You know, there's no reason if a farmer buys this that he can't run it for the next 2-3 years, you know, whatever. So it's that I don't see that being a problem at all, and it'd still be worth something at the end.
I definitely agree with Randy. So if you're in the market for your first drone, or maybe it's time to do an upgrade, I can promise you this. When you see the capabilities like you see in front of you right here, where you can get real-time data, it's pretty impressive technology at a really low cost. Be sure to join us next week. I'm going to show you how to do that yourself. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Randy's comment there about that 6 to 10 month drone market is a good reminder about the rapid progression we're seeing through ag technology.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. Max, it's time to learn about agriculture. Where are we going this week?
Muscle Shoals, you know what state that is?
That's Alabama.
I knew you'd know. Let's join Charlie Behrens now as he tells us about Alabama agriculture.
The United States of America can be very different from one state to another, but one thing every state has in common is agriculture.
Hey everyone, I'm Charlie Behrens and welcome to the Agricultural States of America, where we explore the agriculture of different states and hopefully give you some more appreciation for all the great things that farmers are producing across America. Now today we're looking at the state of Alabama. Popular for college football, golf shores, muscle shows, home to the U.S. Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville, and of course, the peanut capital of the world in Dothan. Seriously, if you buy a jar of roasted peanuts or peanut butter, chances are it came from Dothan. Alabama's peanut farmers rank third in the nation for peanut growing, but the Dothan area is responsible for the majority of all peanut production in the U.S. Every fall, the town celebrates this achievement with the National Peanut Festival, where they crown the new Miss National Peanut. It's even believed that Mr. Peanut has a summer home in Dothan, but have not confirmed that yet. Now, Alabama is often referred to as the Cotton State because cotton is indigenous to the Gulf Coast area, and it has the longest history as a farmable crop in the state. Most of the cotton grown in Alabama and the U.S. is called upland cotton. It's used in everything from plastics and papers to diapers and t-shirts. Today, Alabama ranks in the top 10 among cotton growing states, and within the state, cotton remains the most popular row crop with more acreage than corn, soybeans, peanuts, and wheat. That is a whole lot of cotton. Cotton is not only a great cash crop for farmers, but it's also relatively drought tolerant and ideal for rotation with other crops such as peanuts and soybeans. Overall, agriculture is one of Alabama's top industries, with at least 1 out of every 5 jobs being ag-related and contributing over $70 billion to the state's economy. Alabama's largest farming sector by far is poultry, or chickens, and more specifically, broilers. Alabama raises eggs too, but over the past 40 years, the majority of the nation's egg production has moved to the Midwestern states like Iowa. Broilers, on the other hand, which are chickens raised to eat, have been a primary focus of Alabama for nearly 100 years and has continued to flourish. Today, Alabama is the second leading state in total production of broilers, raising more than 1.2 billion birds each year. So I hope you appreciated all those nuggets of information. It's safe to say chicken has a tender spot in Alabama's heart. All right, poultry in Alabama makes up over 65% of all annual farming revenue in the state and employs more than 86,000 people across the industry. And that's great because we eat a lot of chicken. In fact, on average, each American consumes approximately 93 pounds of chicken meat and more than 267 eggs each year. In addition to chickens, Alabama farmers raise a fair share of cattle and fish, more professionally referred to as aquaculture or aqua farming. Today, Alabama has over 150 aqua farms that grow everything from tilapia to trout and bass, catfish, and of course, let's not forget flounder. And not to drown you with the details, but Alabama has an ideal climate for aquaculture, and farmers began embracing it in the 1960s as the technology became more accessible. In 2020, Alabama produced 1/3 of all U.S. raised farm catfish. And after hearing all that, I think it is safe to say the Alabama aquafarming industry is going swimmingly. All right, that's my last pun for the day because that's all the time we have for now. But you can always go to pivotbio.com/agstates, click on the show icon to explore more about the agriculture of your favorite states and test your knowledge to win great prizes and more. I'm Charlie Behrens, and we will see you next time on the Agricultural States of America.
Oh, there had to be something there that you did not know about Alabama agriculture. Our thanks to Charlie Behrens. And if you want more information on the Ag States of America, you can just go to that website, pivotbio.com/agstates. Well, there were a lot of states represented when we were in Washington this week at the nation's capital. You know, this time of the year is a big time for lobbying. When the House and Senate happen to be in, especially if they're both in, you'll have not just farm organizations, but yes, several farm groups. I met farmers there, especially from Michigan this week, who were in to see their lawmakers. And then you'll have unions there lobbying. You'll have educators, realtors, various groups that go to Washington to have their say, to exercise their right to lobby their lawmakers. And where in the world were you?
Well, I was 2 steps behind that, Max. That policy comes up from the ground, and I was working with the folks at Huntington University. It's a small liberal arts college in Huntington, Indiana. And 8 years ago, they started an ag program, and it's been growing steadily for 8 years. They do an ag breakfast every year for Ag Day. I had the chance to go and talk to them and to hear the enthusiasm for the young folks in that program to pursue agriculture, both production, Max, but importantly, as you note, they're curious about policy, they're curious about law, and that's what we need in ag.
I know it will shock you. I've been on that campus.
Really?
Of course I've been there. Coming up, another Plan Smart, Grow Smart report here. We'll take you to the Research Triangle Park of North Carolina.
This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. Every so often, we like to sit down with our friends from BASF for one of their Plant Smart, Grow Smart series. And Max, I always learn something when we're doing one of these.
Oh, I do too. And we're not always out on farms, as is the case this week. We went to the Research Triangle Park of North Carolina, right there in the Raleigh-Durham area. Brady Spangenberg joined us to answer some questions from me. We often talk about this biggest job on earth that farmers have. How do you folks at BASF work with producers in that role?
I think agriculture is an industry where success does not happen through one person or one entity alone, and we recognize that we play a part in a broader industry, and that grower is part of a whole network of community relations in their local geography. And we want to do as much as we can to support that grower, to support the associations around the grower, and also the dealer network that supports them.
So it's like any good partnership. There's a lot of communication back and forth, I imagine.
A lot of communication back and forth, and the touch points seem to keep growing. I think as the portfolio grows, as the grower grows and expands, we want to make sure that we're there at all the key moments during the growing season.
How is BASF furthering this industry?
A lot of times furthering the industry means picking a few moments that really matter, some of the moments that are real decisive in a growing season. Some of those can be what sort of weed control program the grower elects early in the season. We have long advocated for mixing modes of action, overlapping your residual herbicides with your knockdown herbicides, utilizing as many tools in the toolbox as possible in order to maintain the effectiveness of the chemistry and also ensure most amount of coverage throughout the growing season.
I'm struck with the fact when I visit with you folks at BASF how you are really emphasizing that partnership with the grower. Why is it important that BASF be a strong partner for the farmers?
At BASF, we have learned to grow with the idea that we can't just drop off a jug of chemistry or a bag of seed at the farm gate and say, here you go. I think the environment has changed, the industry has changed, and we need to be able to be there with a farmer, together with their retailer, to have a discussion about the best ways to use that jug of chemistry or that bag of seed. We pride ourselves in having some of the best agronomic expertise in the industry. We constantly do what we can to train, grow, and expand that expertise throughout the industry as best we can. When planting goes, you have to be ready. And so our job is to support that all along the way. And that really can't happen without partnerships and good cooperation.
We sure did enjoy the visit with Brady Spangenberg. We'll share more in future weeks here, and you can go to the website plansmartgrowsmart.com.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead, presented by Pivot Bio Proven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot Bio Proven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
We get the overall perspective for the country from Greg right now, taking a look at the northwest part of the U.S. How are they shaping up for the next week?
It's a quieter, drier scenario. Surprisingly, if you have been looking for rain over the past couple of weeks, it's been focused into the Pacific Northwest. We had some flooding last week into parts of Montana, the northern high plains, and over the southeastern portions of the country. Finally, the weather system's on the move, and that foretells somewhat more positive news from a rainfall standpoint across the plains and the Corn Belt locales. We'll see if it comes in the nick of time. So it's a much quieter setup in the Pacific Northwest. We will spark maybe a stray shower or thunderstorm on the crest here of the hot ridge across parts of the Dakotas, a stray shower to Washington State. Yeah, there in Oregon, those soils are drying out 55 to 65% short and very short in the moisture department. So, but again, more typical mid to late June setup in this particular part of the country. We'll get a front to kind of come on by, again, sparking a stray shower or thunderstorm in this particular setup. Keep an eye on lightning potential. Anything really organized at the top of the ridge and ridge riding to the south and east we go across the plains and into the Corn Belt locales with time maybe a stray shower northern sections of California. Otherwise, pretty quiet weather pattern. The core of the heat expected to continue on across areas of the central Rockies and points to the east and south. A little reflection of a system offshore across California, the low clouds and the June swoon across the Bay Area down into San Diego. Higher bases, though, home. Expect to see a couple of showers and thunderstorms. Again, more lightning potential than anything. Here is warmth across the Central Plains. Here is the capped off atmosphere across Oklahoma and Texas. Boy, those readings into West Texas last week. Cotton Country, 105, 112 degree heat, and actual air temperatures out there. Even worse as you got into the Rio Grande Valley. Kind of a little frontal boundary snaking on through. Heat continues up across Nebraska. A couple of thunderstorm clusters beginning to ride to the east and southeast. A subtle monsoon set up over the southwest. Nothing impressive. We'll move into some slightly cooler air across the valleys of California, Max, later on into the week.
I note you're emphasizing lightning. This is Lightning Awareness Week. 20 people each year die from lightning strikes.
Pretty amazing. Flatlands, golfers, farmers, the whole 9 yards, do the proper safety measures. And with an absence of any rain, significant storminess across the Corn Belt locales, be ready for some of those lightning strikes later on this week. In the meantime, kind of a push of cooler, drier air and a movement of weather systems across the Great Lakes region. Some warmth building up across areas of Nebraska. Pretty quiet weather picture, actually, from the high plains onto the Missouri Valley, coming off a couple of very stormy weeks across the high plains areas, including hail, high wind, and some pretty healthy downpours, and making a dent in the drought situation there. Here is the setup. It is the Ring of Fire. Finally, a more typical, more normal June setup. Warm front moves to the north. Here is the ridge, the fire, the heat, if you will. Kansas on southward. And finally, some thunderstorm clusters expected to make their move northwest to southeast, favoring the northern, northwestern, central, and southeastern Corn Belt from here to there later in the week and beyond. So it is a wetter setup, hopefully coming in the nick of time across those corn and soybean fields of the Midwest. Triple-digit readings again this week into the Rio Grande. We actually were able to generate a couple of thunderstorms into the Rio Grande Valley last week at 115 degree heat down through Brownsville as well. Frontal boundaries straight out across the deep south and southeastern part of the country where storms there could be heavy and severe. And as the week wears on, here is the ridge across the central and southern plains. Storm clusters from the Ozarks to the east and south, just too hot here, Max, to generate thunderstorm activity. Easily up past 100 degrees expected in the afternoon and evening hours.
And some folks in the east have seen day after day of cloudy conditions, moist conditions there. What do you see there the week ahead?
We think generally a movement finally here the next week to 10 days out of a very wet and waterlogged mid-Atlantic region and southeast. And we do get into some cooler air with time over the northeast of New England and a weather system across the Great Lakes region. Fair covering of early week showers and a couple of thunderstorms for the eastern Corn Belt. That system moves on through. Cool high pressure for the northeast of New England. Here is this northwest to southeast jet stream flow. Storms on the warm front drop northwest to southeast. It's the Ring of Fire and a more favorable, typical, normal mid to late June setup from a rainfall standpoint across the Corn Belt. So we are bullish on rainfall in that particular part of the country. Yeah, weeks gone by of totals upwards of a half a foot or more into the mid-Atlantic region. Stormy weather has eased the drought across Florida. Here is the core of the heat across Texas and the western Gulf Coast. Not moving much. The system heads to the Piedmont stalls on out. We'll keep an eye across areas of the Gulf Stream on east for a little busier tropical weather pattern here shaping up here in the week to 10 days.
Greg Solier is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
Many of us want to see Greg Solier's moisture map to see what kind of precipitation amounts we'll have. How significant?
Very significant. Bullish on wet weather. And we have talked about this virtually week after week around here. This is not the way the entire summertime growing season goes, as in extended dryness nor drought. Now, summertime El Niños typically are pretty benign. You don't get a real good reflection, except for maybe areas of the northern plains tend to be a little drier and adequate moisture typically in this part of the country. So we're easing back into that. And other parameters are suggesting that a more typical Ring of Fire is setting up here. So look at the moisture early in the week for the Great Lakes, midweek western Corn Belt, southeast of the Ohio Valley late in the week, 0.5 to 1, maybe some local inch and a half, 2 inch downpours expected. This is only the beginning. Note the wet weather over the southeastern part of the country, a couple of thunderstorm clusters, high plains, scattered 1/4 to 1/2 inch in the Pacific Northwest. But it is a pattern shift, Max, for more beneficial, timely, hopefully, rain in the Corn Belt.
The rains have been so spotty. I've heard that from everybody across the Corn Belt, from folks I visited with in Grand Island, Nebraska, Nebraska, farmer friends in northern Illinois, southern Indiana. So the coverage is going to get a little better?
Yes, better coverages, better mechanisms, more of a south wind component. We've been really absent with that, getting Gulf moisture. The atmosphere has been incredibly warm, but also dry as well. We will change that. Here we are as we move on through the 4th of July holiday period. Some cooler air to the north, the fragmented hot ridges over the southeast, and retrogression of the heat over the southwestern sections of the country bodes well into Montana, although it's kind of wet here. Additional drought relief and beneficial rains, hopefully timely, across the heart of the Corn Belt. Still back into somewhat wetter conditions here beginning the new month of July in the southeast.
Well, we'll stay tuned to watch for that. The week of July 10th, how warm will it be, Greg?
Nothing out of control. No sign of that Texas hot ridge moving any farther than about here, but it's short-lived. Warmth up towards the Sioux, a little below average over the southeastern part of the country, reflection of weak tropical systems. Nothing major, a little bit cooler than average in the western parts of the country, where we get some moisture to the northern and central valleys of California. Not so much a monsoon setup, but a couple of thunderstorms expected. Watch the lightning potential. Moisture for the upper Midwest, back to normal eastern and southern Corn Belt. That's okay. And we'll keep an eye on maybe a weak diffuse tropical setup over the eastern Gulf. Remember, Max, it's an El Nino year, wind shear up aloft, so nothing major, but moisture in store for the southeast again.
The week of the 17th, will it be warm or will that heat regress a little bit?
Here comes the heat over the southeastern part of the country, but nothing out of control. No extreme values anticipated. We again lay out a prod of some cool air over the northern reaches of the country, and the jet stream pattern is again favorable for organized rains over much of the Corn Belt and a busy tropical setup over the southeast.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
It's a 70-year-old tractor, and it's going to stay in the family, but it's going to move maybe 300 miles. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Mystic Lubricants. Mystic Lubricants are made to make it last. Well, Walter Middendorf decided in late 1953 he needed a new tractor because he was going to get married in February of 1954. So he went into the nearest tractor dealership there at Galena, Illinois, to buy a new Super H, a 1953 Super H from Klein Implement Company. He got a 2-bottom plow, he got a 2-row cultivator, he got all of that for $1,800. In the waning days of 53, well, less than 2 months later, Walter got married. And for Walter and Marceline Middendorf, this Super H was the only tractor they had for 4 years. Well, Roger Middendorf, their son, bought the tractor sometime around 2000. Another quarter century later, Roger's son, Eric, has decided that old farmall needs to stay in the family. So it will, even though it'll be a Minnesota tractor now. 3-generation red tractor, now owned by Eric Middendorf, Spring Grove, Minnesota. He's the nephew of farm broadcaster Bob Middendorf, good friend of ours in southwest Wisconsin. Well, every week we check in to see what's selling at Big Iron Auctions. Let's head that way right now to Mark Stock.
Well, Max Johnson Tractor, with locations across Wisconsin and Illinois, will sell 180 high-quality items on June the 27th. Case IH 9230 four-wheel drive track combine will sell. 2013 Case IH 350 quad track will sell. A John Deere 7290R mechanical front tractor. There's Kinsey planters on this sale. Caterpillar and Bobcat Gale skid steers. Kubota compact utility tractor. We've got a great selection selling for Johnson Tractor on June the 27th. Also on the same day, Steve Loggle is retiring from Lawston, Illinois. Check out their Case IH 2366 combine, their super sharp Case IH 8920 mechanical front tractor, only 2,827 hours. And the Case IH 7250 tractor has 3,653 hours. It looks like a brand new one. And on Wednesday, June 28th, and Thursday, June 29th, Big Iron will sell 3,000 plus items, equipment from all across the country, Max. The market still very active. We're now scheduling auctions for August and September. Call now to get your equipment listed for maximum exposure. If you're looking for quality equipment, check out the Big Iron website, bigiron.com.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Pioneer, developing new generations of seed innovations for new generations of farmers. Pioneer, what's next happens here. With the end of the school year across the country, new FFA leaders are taking their offices. And this week, we're talking to the New York State FFA President, Ella Underberg. Ella, how long have you been a member of FFA?
I've been able to be a member since I was in 6th grade. So for the past 7 years, I've been able to take the opportunity to be a part of FFA and everything that it has to offer.
And did you grow up in a farm, or what was it that made FFA seem interesting?
I grew up showing livestock, from hogs to sheep to goats, but my grandparents own a dairy farm, and growing up I worked on a maple farm. So I've always been surrounded by agriculture, so it's no surprise that I would show up in FFA.
And so then over time, of course, you had the opportunity to participate in different functions. What were some of the highlights of your time as an FFA member?
For me, FFA was where I made a lot of my closest friends. So we were able to travel together and compete. So I've competed in a wide variety of contests, from public speaking events like extemporaneous speaking and prepared public speaking, to talking about some controversial topics with my agricultural issues team, and then being able to take these contests from the state level and then sometimes even have the opportunity to compete at the national level in Indianapolis.
And now, of course, you are leading the New York State FFA. Ella, what are you looking forward to in this next year of service?
I'm really looking forward to being able to connect with members and help them grow individually. Growing up at FFA, I always felt really important, and I want to continue to give that feeling to members across the state. So making them feel important and help them grow their own skills with all the members across the state.
FFA across New York State, are you seeing enrollment continue to grow?
Yeah, throughout the past year, we have had thousands of more members join. So right now we're at about 11,000 members across New York State, and we're only seeing this trend continue to grow.
Well, that is good news, Ella. And as you look out to your future, do you hope to find a career in agriculture?
Yeah, so I'm going to take on this next year of service with taking some online classes to keep up with my studies. But at the completion of my year, I'm going to attend West Virginia University for agriculture education.
Well, we wish you the best of luck. Ella Underberg, New York State FFA President. Well, folks, as we get deeper into summer, farmers across the country are finding opportunities to get together and talk a little bit about equipment. It happens at parades. We'll be seeing some on the 4th of July. It happens at tractor rides. And of course, it happens at those farm shows. Max, we're getting excited about that, aren't we?
Oh, we sure are looking forward to the farm shows, by all means. And we'll start it off with a half century of progress the weekend before the big Farm Progress Show. That'll be the 24th through the 27th of August at Rantoul, Illinois. A big premier sponsor of that event is Beck's Hybrids. And practical farm research agronomist Clayton Stuffelbeam with Beck's joins us here this weekend. I know you've been out of the fields looking around. It's a crop that needs a big drink of water, isn't it?
Yep, our rain gauges are sure thirsty here.
What would you say, looking at the crops? Obviously, they have to be showing some stress. Am I correct?
Showing stress right now, especially in the heat of the day. I would say, in my opinion, the cool nights have been saving us. That's been our saving grace.
You know, I've noticed that too, and over a wide geography. You know, we've cooled off nicely during those nighttime hours, as you point out, and there have been some places where there have been some heavy dews in the morning. Maybe that helps a slight amount.
It's not going to hurt us.
Well, we are pleased that Beck's will again help make possible the half century of progress at Rantoul. It's almost an indescribable event. How would you describe that event out there at the Air Base?
I would agree with you. I've been going since about 2011. Something I look forward to every 2 years to be able to join that event. I kind of call it the Super Bowl of tractor shows.
It is. It's also called the Disney World of antique tractor shows sometimes too. But it's such a great multi-generational event. I guess there's the things I've said in the past about it, Clayton. You'll see on the same UTV out there, you'll see the family members of 3 different generations.
Yeah, but it's a really, really awesome place to have a show and to be able to bring generations, back with your whole family and come join.
You'll be represented there again as well. Beck's will be there. Am I correct?
Yep, we'll be there. We're one of the bigger sponsors there at the show. We're very excited to be able to sponsor this show yet again this year.
Well, it wouldn't be possible without the help of folks like you, so we say thank you very much to all the Beck's family. A great company. It's been around, I think, since the 30s, headquartered in Atlanta, Indiana, if I recall correctly.
Yep, 1937.
I'll be darned. I had forgotten it was back that far even. We'll see you there. We'll see you at Rantoul. Thanks, Clayton.
Thank you, Max.
Clayton Stufflebeam, one of those folks in the Beck's family. Mike?
Well, it'll be good to see Clayton and the rest of the Beck's family there at the Half Century of Progress later this summer. And Max, you've been on the road. I understand you were in Nebraska recently.
Yeah, we were out at Grand Island for the Red Power Roundup. It was great to see those collectors of the International Harvester equipment. They surprised me right there after my 70th birthday with a little bit of a celebration. Doug Herbeck put it all together, and he even brought in this guy by way of video.
And now let me say to our friends in Nebraska how much we've enjoyed working with not only them, but an audience throughout the entire nation. As a matter of fact, throughout the world. We shared many of those times together, and I enjoyed every minute with you. So again, happy birthday.
Yeah, we celebrated some birthdays over the years, to be sure. Orion and I have been partners for 45 years, Mike.
Wow, that is incredible, Max Armstrong. That's incredible.
I feel very fortunate, by all means.
Absolutely.
We hope you'll be here with us next weekend on This Week in Agribusiness. We look forward to it. We'll see you then. So long, everyone.
This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communication in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.